What's your I met a celebrity but didn't let on that I knew who they were story? Was walking out of a gas station over on Crescent Heights and Sunset and heard a hey coming from a cracked window on tinted out Range Rover that was parked at one of the pumps. I walk over to the car to see Jeff Goldblum, who had somehow seen my gold ring I was wearing on my right hand from 20 feet away. He proceeds to tell me how he loves my ring and has been looking for one just like it and asks me where I got it. I tell him it was my grandfather's and he asks to see it up close. I hold my hand up to Jeff Goldblum, he takes my hand, gushes about the ring for a minute and thanks me. I said sure and walked back to my apartment. I like to think we're friends now. I was in a bookstore in RI and was in the horror section. Picked up a book by Stephen King and flipped it over and saw his picture on the back, or inside the cover, I don't really remember. I look up, and in the next aisle over, right across the bookshelf from me, is a guy that looks exactly like Stephen King. So I hold up the book and say, is this you? Yeah? Good books. Thanks. And that was that. Not sure if this counts as a celebrity, but last fall I was flying from LA to Dallas and the person sitting next to me was a Real Housewife from Bravo. I didn't recognize her since I don't watch her show, but she did mention it to me multiple times during the flight. She wanted to apologize in advance in case there were fans hounding her at the baggage claim. Spoiler alert, there weren't. Hours later when I was checking into my hotel, she was there in the lobby and made sure to tell me again that she was on TV. Worked at a hotel and Russell Crowe came in the lobby. He went to the house phones and called front desk. Where I was working. I could see him pretty easily. I answered the phone and he asked to be connected to a room, so I put him through. This wasn't long after he threw a phone at a hotel clerk, so I didn't want to take a chance at pissing him off. I worked at a Barnes & Noble in NY as a clerk, but once or twice I'd be called over to the in-store Starbucks cafe to help out whenever they were understaffed. One time, Alan Rickman came up and ordered something. I can't recall what. I wrote Hans Gruber on his cup though. He smiled at me when he noticed it. Was at a convenience store in LA when me and a very nicely dressed black gentleman walked up to the cashier at the same time to pay. It was nighttime and he had his dark shades on and was talking on his phone. I gave him the after you gesture and he nodded and said thanks buddy, paid and left. It wasn't until he was out of the store that I realized he was Jamie Foxx. My husband was vacationing in Arizona, killing time in a bar over a burger and a beer. A guy sits next to him and my husband has a nice chat with him. The guy leaves and my husband goes to close his tab and the bartender tells him it's been covered by the guy he was talking to. The bartender asks if he knows who he was talking to. My husband has no idea. Chuck Norris, it was his bar. My dad and I bumped into Michael Jordan at a Walgreens near Chicago. This was back in 2006 or so. We were picking out birthday cards for my mom, and MJ and his son came in the same aisle browsing some cards. My dad kept his cool and continued to look through different cards, giving him his personal space. I, on the other hand, was 9 years old and in awe, sort of staring at him. After MJ picked out his card, he winked at me and gave me a walk by fist bump. Didn't really set in until I was older how cool that was. Couple of years ago I was playing blackjack at a relatively low stakes table, maybe $10 minimum. I was chatting up a lady in her 30s next to me, just chatting, nothing more dart. Her husband was sitting next to her. He was a frumpy guy in his 60s. After about 30 minutes he took off and left the table. I was still chatting up the lady and she told me that other guy was her husband. I asked why they were in town and she said for work. She mentioned that her husband was the drummer for Aerosmith, Joey Kramer, playing at the same casino the next night dart. I stupidly asked how when he started playing with them. Her reply, since the beginning. Before I realized who he was, Sean Alexander asked me if I liked football. I told him I liked the Steelers. He said, yeah, I lost to them in the Super Bowl. I felt pretty stupid, but he thought it was funny. Super nice guy. About 40 years ago my father was sitting next to Telly Savalas at some Vegas blackjack table. For about an hour they talked and bet some large amounts of money, and my father never let on that he knew the guy was famous. Tully finally says, "It's pretty cool that you haven't asked for my autograph." My father responds, "Well, you didn't ask for mine." Tully laughs and writes on a cocktail napkin, "Hey Jeff, can I have your autograph?" He carried that damn napkin with him for years.